pay, minimum wage, do they differ in value or in purpose? And if they do, what are the significant variations or differences?
So thank you very much. I think it's important that we understand, as my senior colleagues have indicated, that Section 113 of the Labour Act empowers the National Tripartite Committee, employers, government, and labour to negotiate the minimum wage, as has been already reiterated. Over the period, once we have established the national minimum wage and communique has been issued, then government under the Joint Public Standing Negotiation Committee also convene a meeting to negotiate. So both is negotiations, to add to Samamu. Because at the national tripartite meeting, we engage... Is determined
through consultation.
Through consultation.
But as Mr. Mamun said, the base pay is negotiated between public sector workers and government.
Yes. So in the process of consultations, sometimes it's difficult.
Some negotiation. Yeah,
it's difficult to decouple or draw the line between what is negotiations and what is consultation. It gets heated, and you have to understand, even though the word consultation over the period has been contested by Labour as to what kind of consultation is consultation. So base pay, as been said earlier on, is purely a public service engagement, and that usually happens after the minimum wage has been determined. This year, we almost did it concurrently. Not concurrently. Whilst we were having consultations on the minimum wage, there was also a discussion along the line for the base pay. And this is something that we have raised issues as to going forward, whether or not there's a need for us to consider a sectorial-based model or still refer to the national base model. So yes, it has a very strong legal instrument that backs this activity. So it is not a matter of I have the right to do it or not to do it. And again, going forward, we'll begin to now discuss the parameters, the model, the formula that is being used and whether or not.
We'll get there, but I think we should go on a short break because I don't want to lose grips with the consultation, and participation, and negotiation. It's one thing that at least, that's my takeaway as far as this segment is concerned. So viewers, stay tuned. We'll be right back and to continue this interesting discussion.
This is how we do. M-I, Divalish, a.k.a. You know the name?
Ghana music has really been has really been doing great stuff.
Whenever Mr. Drew's on stage, it's a blast.
Are you ready to dive into the heart of entertainment? Let's start, where we explore the latest trends in the entertainment industry. From viral moments to hottest celebrity stars, we've got you covered. Have questions? We want to hear from you. Your voice matters. Let's vibe together. I got a secret. Do you want to hear it? You're always on my mind.
Welcome back. We are discussing wages, policy, and the worker. A Labour response to the 2025 mid-year budget review. We've had extensive discussion trying to understand what minimum wage, daily minimum wage means, what the base pay means, and what a living wage also means. And we've tried to find and establish the differences, the variations between the three. But then the question we want to find out is this: who determines minimum wage? And I want to start from Mr. Kumsen.
So thank you again. By the Labour Act 2003-651, which is actually the authority for which we can make reference to, that which there's no reference point. The section 113 is what directs as to who must do what, and that is the tripartite, the National Tripartite Committee, whose function includes the determination of the national minimum wage. So the constituent, you have the Ghana Employers Association, you have organized labor, and here you have Forum represented, Ghana Federation of Labor, and then the Ghana TUC, which constitute the organized labor. Obviously, they are the affiliates. So, and government. And every year, we convene at the Ministry of Employment to consider the various, criteria, looking at the economic situation, looking at the social issues. And then that forms the basis for engaging in that discourse, that kind of consultation, dialogue.
I want to get this clear. So, tripartite is represented by the labor unions on one part,
yes.
Employers,
yes.
On another part,
yes.
And government.
And government.
So, it's just made up of these three distinct bodies.
And again, that is also backed by
law.
Convention 144.
Convention 144, okay.
Of the International Labour Convention. So this is all framed in a very beautiful legal arrangement. So that is the representatives that assemble or that meet to review and taking into account certain variables to inform what has to be done as far as the determination and the levels are concerned.
Yeah.
5 from employers and effectively 6 from government, because the law says 555. But the chairman of the National Tripartite Committee usually is the Minister for Employment and so or Labor. So it makes government size 6.
Okay.
And so we are talking about wages. So it's important that you know that employers are as interested as government, because we are discussing government here as an employer. So effectively it's 6 plus 5, 11 against 5. That's what's happening in the National Tripartite.
No, but the good thing for me is that at least the representation is properly defined.
Oh yes, by law.
By law.
Yeah.
So that is so that if tomorrow you hear of a body that is not defined by law, whose decisions or pronouncements becomes a determining point within a tripartite, then you could have an issue to ask. But then if I could ask Mr. Mahmoud, what about the base pay? How is that determined? And who has that responsibility?
As has been noted, this is determined between government and workers within the public sector who are using the single spine salary structure. And it is negotiation. And since it is negotiation, proposals are made to government. And government responds in various ways, and it goes on until a decision or an agreement is reached.
Wow. Okay.
But from our discussions, let the public or our listeners understand that we are only discussing a component of emolument or remuneration. Emolument includes other
allowances,
benefits, and so on.
Salary aspect.
You see, the pay aspect. Because you depend, pay, salary, remuneration, they are referring to different kinds.
I think it's good for this clarification because we are here to educate our viewers, especially as to the use of these terminologies and what they mean and what they stand. So it's good you added the fact that when we talk about minimum wage, we talk about base pay, we talk about living wage. That is not the entirety of emoluments that are paid to employees. That's wonderful. So then what about, so when it comes to the living wage, I think we've tried to establish how it comes about and the fact that even in the global convention, they even had challenges trying to provide adequate definition until recently, more recently. And also the fact that at a point in time, Dr. Ba and Mr. Amamu had been part of a committee that had tried to bring
2007.
What is the status now? Is there a legal backing to minimum wage? Sorry, living wage?
No, not yet. As I said, 2007, we agreed the definition as a subcommittee of the National Tripartite. So the Tripartite Committee was supposed to adopt and move on with it.
That's 2017.
Yes, but we still don't have the living wage. The National Tripartite Committee, by law, still determines the minimum wage. And as I said, if you allow me, I will just say a few things about what we agreed then.
Okay.
The definition we agreed was the level of pay that is sufficient for a full-time employee to provide basic needs for his or her household. I said this earlier. And at the time, the Ghana Living Standard Survey results 4 defined household, the size, average, to be 4. So we used the 4. Everything we did there
was based on statistics.
Everything. And then we said, so when you say provide basic needs, what are the basic needs? In fact, we went down to say there are 9 items that constitute the basic needs in Ghana. Food, also based on Ghana Living Standard Survey. Food and nutrition, housing, clothing, education, healthcare, transportation, electricity. Nutrition-based living standard survey. So we knew that if there are 4 people in the house, the man, the woman, or the couple plus 2 children, we went even beyond just saying if the minimum wage is this, multiply by 4. No. There are adult equivalences. Okay. So based on what the man consumes in the house, they have adult equivalences for the children. We went ahead to even calculate adult equivalences that you need to add. So a lot of technical work has gone into it. What is left is a political will to replace the minimum wage with a living wage.
So can I say that, am I justified to say that our minimum wage is not creating a living for us?
No, definitely not. I mean, the level, you asked a question earlier, the values between base pay and minimum wage, they are basically effectively almost the same now. But it's about 20 Ghana cedis per day for 8 hours of work. If I can quote for you the same minimum wage in other countries, if you take UK, for example, and I'm using this because professionals, people from this country run there. So we are not internationally competitive at all. And that is why we will continue to lose people.
Retaining quality labor.
Yes. If base pay, for example, this is where the doctors and the nurses and the midwives, the police service, immigration service and all, they are here. They are on the single spine. And if the minimum is just like the minimum wage of 20 Ghana cedis per month, per day, then you know we are in trouble. Internationally, we are not competitive at all. And so when labor goes there and we say, please, first of all, the value you are paying us is far less than the value we are offering to the public. That is one. The other thing is, if you really want to keep our people here, you need to do something about base pay and also the minimum wage. That is why the living wage discussion is key. And I'm happy that ILO itself, as I told you last year, brought experts, and now they have agreed. So ILO is willing and ready to help Ghana to start developing towards having a living wage. And I'm saying so because I'm a member of the board of the ILO, and I know that the ILO is ready to help all constituent members across the world to develop a living wage. So this discussion is happening at the right time. And when we are resetting Ghana, one thing we should reset is pay for workers.
There's this Chinese proverb that a journey of 1,000 kilometers starts with one step. In your estimation, do you think the journey towards a living wage, in fact, we've taken a step yet?
I'm very positive about it. That look, if things go the way things are going in the last 6 months, inflation is low, we are controlling our public expenses and so on, and critically, if we manage to move the taxation, the revenue we get from taxes, tax revenue, from what it is now, 13% of GDP, we move it to 18%. Ghana can pay living wage even more. Because you see that the GDP will have grown from 13%, for taxes will have grown from 13% of GDP to 18%. That is huge. And that will reduce the percentage of public sector wages to the GDP.
Yeah.
That means that there will be room for government to actually move. The biggest problem we have is the collection of our revenue. That is why people start quoting 70% of our tax revenue goes to public sector, as if they pay to public sector workers like unemployment benefit. It is not unemployment benefit. People work, they get out of their houses, go into some public sector organization and work for that organization. Some of them have worked for 40 years, 30 years, 50 years. Therefore, when it is presented like that, it's very unfair. We should acknowledge that people work before they earn that money. So I believe that if we manage to increase our revenue levels, look, Ghana can pay living wage and even more.
Okay, so we'll take a different dimension, but I think one thing also is the fact that whilst looking at ways of increasing revenue, it is also true that we should also be looking at ways of reducing our expenditure, which includes ensuring that those who are actually working are those who are being paid. So I think I agree with you. But Mr. Amu, to your thought-provoking, what do you call it, statement you made, especially about the participation, consultation, and negotiation. So if the daily minimum wage involves the process of participation and consultation, how is it negotiated for, or how do they arrive at the conclusion where they decide that, okay, we are giving 10% adjustment and it becomes acceptable to all parties?
When you say acceptable to all parties,
but that's a pronouncement that they agreed.
So
they agreed. There was consultation. There was participation.
Yeah.
So agreed.
Yeah. Before I answer this question, let us just take what the ILO experts between February, March 2024, just last year, agreed on what a living wage is. A living wage is a wage level that is necessary to afford a decent standard of living for workers and their families. I think Dr. Barr has taken into account the country's circumstances and calculated for the work performed during the round of normal working hours. The estimate is to be calculated in accordance with the ILO principles of estimating the living wage, and to be achieved through the wage setting process in line with ILO principles of wage setting, such as the need for tripartite dialogue and collective bargaining. Okay, now ask your question again.
So my question is that if you say that at the tripartite meeting there's consultation, there's participation, then there's the general consensus and agreeing on the daily minimum wage, how are you able to arrive at that angle without negotiation, where it becomes acceptable to all? Because you'll be there and you say that, oh, the tripartite committee, after their deliberations or whatever it is, in fact, no, after their consultations and participation, have announced this new minimum wage. How do you arrive at it? Because it appears that once it is consultation and participation, whatever comes out later, you agree with it. Because we've been told the participation, the spectrum or the number that represents labor.
Yeah. I think now that we understand living wage from minimum wage, and that we have been practicing setting minimum wage.
Okay.
The minimum wage that existed is often what? Adjusted. That is what the tripartite does. Normally, they look at inflation, and they look at inflation with the understanding that if you say I should get, say, 1,000 cedis, that 1,000 cedis that you have given me for this year, you presumed that, oh, inflation will be 5%. And that 1,000 cedis will be worth 1,000 cedis throughout the year. On the other hand, if at the end of the year we realize that inflation has been 10%, which means that all along I've lost out, because you assume 5%, but it ended up 10. So I have lost
about
out.
5%.
That is what the tripartite will call restoration. That is for, let's say, we are talking of 2026. Then they will look at what government also presumes to be inflation for 2026, so that it will be factored into the adjustment of the current minimum wage. Okay, so normally these two factors play very significant role in adjusting the minimum wage.
Okay, but then you realize that
before they do that,
I want to come in with a question. You can add it to your answer, especially because you mentioned the adjustments that takes place at the end of every year. Government, by its economic policies, undertakes what they call the media review, and that is to look at what was envisaged at the beginning of the year, and so half year you look at whether the trajectory is being followed or achieved, or objectives are being achieved. If there are variations, you look at what kind of interventions you need to put in place to stay afloat or be able to achieve whatever expectations you have. Don't you think that minimum wage, for that matter, and base pay or emoluments should be part of the budget review. Because normally you hear about all economic indicators, but nothing is mentioned about salary. At the point when workers were given, is it 10%? The 10%. Inflation was hovering around 23, thereabouts. Is it also fair to say that, okay, media they could have even reviewed and so we projected 5%, we are still around 12%, and so workers need to be cushioned maybe by 2%?
Yeah, you see, if you look at the factors, we are using point-to-point inflation with December as the floor.
Okay.
Okay. So if we are bringing in, say, June, and those things, it might pose its own problems. What is important is weather. You see, because we have seen the large gap between what would be a decent wage for a household of 4 and the 20 cedis we are getting per day. That's a very wide thing. And the issue here, and from what I read to you, I think it is now time for tripartite to meet and adopt this definition. When this definition is adopted, it must be acceptable to all the parties, not only labor. You see, what has happened all the time is that, yes, labor accepts, but employers and government don't seem to accept the principle or don't seem to work with the principle. These are the problems that we have. So that now that they have come out with these things, look, when I examined it, I asked the following questions. What is what do we mean by country circumstances? I first said, how do we determine what is decent? Dr. Ba has already explained that for Ghana, we have talked about this over 20 years ago. And the concept of decent pay, the factors that should go into it are all there. So if we can go back, we can know what is decent. Then the next question is the family. What should the family be?
Honestly, Mr. Mamu, I want to throw this to Dr. Ba,
right,
who has been part of tripartite for a long while.
I met him there.
And you met him there.
I met him
and you left him there.
Oh, now he doesn't.
I still want to find out that in determining the daily minimum wage, what are the considerations?
What are the what?
The considerations.
Oh,
what does tripartite want to achieve? If and is tripartite aware, conscious of the fact that, for instance, it would not provide decent living for the employee.
Yeah.
It would not meet the minimum living standard for a household. And for that matter, in a country where we depend on this extended family system, and most often the man is the breadwinner, and the money you've determined, you've agreed to pay him, cannot take care of him.
His spouse.
How do you expect? So I want you to look at this in the broader perspective. Look at it.
Let me add to what Mr. Mamu explained. He is a guru of minimum wage and incomes generally in this country. Look, I think what we should mention is that the National Tripartite Committee constitutes what we call the technical subcommittee, which is also made up of the three parties, government, employers, and labor, to do the technical work, make proposals for the bigger tripartite committee. And that is where they do all the analysis that Mr. Mamu just explained. The technical work is done by this subcommittee. They bring it, and then that is where the discussions come.
The consultation comes.
Yeah. And also, we refer to ILO Convention 131. Let me read one portion of that, just to buttress the point that was made earlier by both Mr. Mamu and Brother Kumsen. He said, each member of the International Labour Organization, which ratifies this convention, Convention 131, undertakes to establish a system of minimum wage covering minimum wage, which covers all groups of wage earners whose terms of employment are such that coverage will be appropriate. The number two is what I'm very happy about the article. The competent authority in each country, the competent authority, this is government, in each country shall, in agreement or after full consultation with representatives, organizations of employers and workers concerned, where such exists, determine the groups of wage earners to be covered. So the consultation is emphasized.
Of beneficiaries of the minimum wage.
Yes.
But my concern is...
No, I'm coming to the values.
Okay.
I just wanted to support with the convention. Look, your question that the tripartite committee is aware that whatever they agree on will not be adequate. That is why we are asking for a living wage. Because for as long as the law says minimum wage, we are not considering the household. We are considering the individual who presents himself or herself to the employer. Even if it is an individual, the question is what we are providing adequate, even for the individual? The answer is no. We all live in this country. 20 Ghana cedis for 8 hours of work is definitely woefully inadequate. Everybody knows that. Anytime labor, and that's why I raised the issue of who constitutes the national minimum wage, so the National Tripartite Committee.
Yeah.
Because we are discussing wages, we have the employers and government on one side, because they are paying, and we, the workers, are on the other side. And it's 5 against 11 in that discussion. So even though they say it's consultation, as Mr. Brother Kumsen said, there is a lot of negotiation that goes on there. Entailing in that one is some very serious negotiation, sometimes can take 3 months. And then at the end of the day, we come up with this. And I can tell you that the elements that are considered, government comes with its own, employers come with their own, and we go with our own. We go with the argument we are making all the time. I mean, we labor. Employers come with argument about productivity. And they agree with government about that.
Who is the major employer?
Yes. And then government comes with all its IMF policies and what they have gone to agree and so on. So you end up, agreeing on something really, not adequate. But if we manage to move from minimum wage to living wage, the considerations will be different. And that is why I agree fully with Mr. Mamu's point that this is the time labor should put it formally on the table again, as we did it at the time. I should also add that in the minimum wage considerations, we consider productivity. The way we measure it is not how they measure productivity at the enterprise level. We look at the GDP and allocate a certain proportion to workers, and that is also taken into account. But that is quite a recent phenomenon. When we started minimum wage in the 90s, it was not like that. But eventually, because the employers kept saying productivity, we needed to have an indicator of productivity to capture it in the minimum wage discussion. So in the last 10 years or 15, we have considered productivity issues as part of minimum wage.
Mr. Kumsin, you would agree with me that most often when the new minimum wage is announced, workers do not show excitement. They are normally dissatisfied. And they feel let down by the labor unions. Even though it is not negotiation, but then possibly it's a consultation that has metamorphosed into some kind of negotiation. Could you enumerate the role played by labor unions in this participation and consultation process?
See, I tell you something. I want to be very blunt. The current ILO Convention 131 establishes a very clear criteria that could have been relied on to negotiate a living wage. One, it said, what is the need of the employee and his family in the determination of a national minimum wage? The first criteria, according to the International Labour Organization, is what is the need of the employee and his family. That is not determination, or the title is not determination of a living wage. The title of that convention is Minimum Wage Fixing Convention.
Okay.
So the first criteria is what? The need of the employee and his family in the determination of a national minimum wage. Number two, the cost of living. The cost of living. Contribution to social security. Then it talks about productivity. And I also went in to talk about the availability of the resource or the capacity of the various country that the negotiation is taking place. My question, and what we have questioned, Dr. Ba and GF and all of us, is the formula that is being invoked in the determination of the national minimum wage in Ghana. Maybe it's because Ghana has not ratified the convention. Maybe it's because they think that because they have not ratified the convention, it becomes more persuasive than a binding instrument that should compel the country to do that. So the problem, the fundamental problem, the cancerous thing that we have to find a way of dealing with is the revision of the formula. So what is the formula? Mr. Amu talked about the inflation. Inflation does not measure the cost of living. Inflation is a measure of the changes in the cost of living over a period of time. But the fundamental question is that what is the cost of living as per the ILO Convention 131? So what is our proposal? In going into this year's national daily minimum wage and base pay negotiation, it's important that the tripartite considers a cost of living index as a parameter in the determination of the national minimum wage. Then another criteria, another formula that is there is what do you call it? The restoration factor. My brother, Mr. Amu just said here, the projected inflation is by government. None of us we don't do survey to come up with inflation, whether it will be 10%, 5%. We don't do that. We don't have the infrastructure to do a competitive or competing research to come and challenge government. So they'll tell you what is the inflation for the year, and we take it. What he's saying is that if inflation, and there's something that Dr. Banks, which is very profound, Mr. Mamu said, end-to-end inflation. And I've heard Dr. Ba at some point question whether or not in negotiations, the end-to-end value is more preferable or to use an average.
Average.
Because there are times where we had 20% in January, 15% in February, 30% in June. Then when you get to December, you are seeing 12%. By the formula we have adopted, it disregards all the trend
variations,
and you're going to use 12%. What have you done? So the problem that has to be dealt with, and I am happy to put on record that this year's negotiation for the base pay minimum wage, government was very clear that there's a need for us to review the formula. They told us, and for me, that's one of the reasons why we even accepted the 10%. So what is the way forward? Organized labor need to take...
Before you go to the way forward, you are drifting from my question.
I'm coming to your question.
I said, what has been the role of labor unions all this while in the consultation and the participation process of determining the wage, minimum wage?
It's been negotiation, it's been consultation. If you ask for the role of organized labor, the role has been engaging government at the table, and like we've said initially,
and bringing out some of all these arguments.
There is a technical subcommittee that is constituted as a subset,
and that determines the threshold.
That determines referencing all these variables, all these parameters to come up with a proposal. Let me tell you what happened. This year, when we met as technical committee, do you know what happened?
Well, let you tell me.
When we used the formula, we had, and if it had been implemented, the scenario 1, minimum wage was going to be reduced by 0.7%. What formula is that? A formula that is able to reduce minimum wage.
So we're going to be worse off.
So what I'm saying is that the problem we have to deal with, and I'm happy that my senior colleagues have mentioned, is there's a fundamental problem that has to do with the formula. Even in terms of the distribution of the GDP over labor, the scientific value, whether or not it actually represents the actual active labor force, or it's just spread out to everybody, because when the denominator is large, you're going to have an insignificant result. So if you are going to divide productivity or GDP over a certain number of people, and that number is very big,
it will fall.
Once the base is big, it falls.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is there's a need for us to get into the formula. And the conference that government agreed for us to have, to look into the formula, take a very, laser look at the formula, has to happen.
Basically, the GDP growth in real terms is what is considered productivity growth. Yeah. Because we have not had the opportunity to aggregate so GDP growth in real terms represents productivity growth in the country that year.
Yeah.
And when we started, 60% of that was allocated and worked into minimum wage. Later, the employers and government came together and reduced it to 50. And we thought, okay, it was fair, because they tried to push us to justify the 60%. We started with 80, but we ended up negotiated it to 50. That's fine. But the idea was that we are starting from 50 and we will agree on the formula which incorporates productivity, because the employers insist that every pay determination must include a consideration for productivity. And I think that's the job they do, making sure their members also don't lose and that they gain from whatever they pay to workers. So I think the point that Mr. Akumsin and Mr. Mamu have made about the need, Mr. Mamu started with the living wage thing. And I think our labor friends who are listening to us must take note that until they propose formally to the two parties, those two parties, who, because they pay, they will never
bring it up on them.
Therefore, we have to formalize it. We have to. The labor, organized labor must send this proposal to government as part of this year's negotiation that, okay, this is the formula. This is the formula we think should be used. And let them come to say, it is not. That is something that, if you are not proactive, I can tell you, employers and government, they will never come with such a formula.
I think we've had enough discussion on the national minimum wage, and I wanted Mr. Amamu to come in again with the base pay negotiation process and walk us through how you arrive at that. We will. Just a moment, if you can.
Base pay, you see, before we delve into this base pay negotiation, it started from a point. And where is that point? That point was where the Kuen, who was the consultant for bringing in this idea of single spine pay policy, his or her recommendations should be looked at. First, the consultant established that public sector pay levels are not the same for all the institutions, and that they should be classified into 10 different groups. Each group was looked at to see where it belongs in the scheme of things, whether they are at the top, in the middle, or they are below. So they did what they call salary differentials. Okay? And the purpose of the salary differentials was to inform the way negotiations should be done in such a way that at a point in time, after some time, they gave themselves 10 years, then there will be a level playing field, meaning the differences would have been minimized.
Yeah.
Now,
is that the case?
The implementation of this negotiation started at a time on the basis that everybody was already, the level playing field has been achieved, and that we go in and negotiate the same level of increases. So really, they formed what they call Public Service Joint Standing Negotiating Committee. The assumption under that is different from
the stations on the ground.
No, from what the scheme sought to achieve.
Reported.
You see, so right from the start, this group or this body has been negotiating common levels of increases, ignoring
the disparity
which brought in even the single spine.
I think I want to call for a commercial break. When we come back, I would want us to look at the negotiation process again, look at the role of Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, and possibly the differentials that continue to exist in the pay structure of different organizations, even though they are all public sector organizations, with the single spines purported to have given us a level platform. So we'll be back in a short while. Those are your regular hosts, Cephas Dosu.
For in-depth discussions surrounding employment relations, the rights of workers, the quest for industrial harmony, and evolving landscape of work. Walatu Walasa seeks to bring to bear Your host for Walatu Walasa.
Welcome back, viewers. We are still in the process of discussing wages, policy, and the worker, and the extent to which the labor of Ghana responds to the media budget of 2025. I'm your regular host, Cephas Ndusu. Yeah, before we went on the break, we're trying to understand the process by which the base pay is determined. And Mr. Amamu was taking a bite at that. I would want him to conclude, then we can take other perspective from other discussants here.
Yeah, as I noted, the current process involves the two parties. In fact, it's even government on one side and then the public sector institutions on the other. Since the public sector institutions subsisting on the single spine salary structure are many, all those institutions have representation on what they call the Public Sector Standing Joint Negotiating Committee. And it is at that level that proposals from labor or from the public sector institutions are looked at from the government point of view, and negotiations continue until such time that there is an agreement. But it should be noted that when the single spine was being introduced, there was a tacit agreement that at least the base pay would be 10% more over the national daily minimum wage.
Okay.
And this understanding has been flouted intermittently. There are times...
So if I get it right, the intention was that the national minimum wage will become a reference point in determining the base pay. So that if, let's say, today, tripartite should meet and do 10% adjustment in minimum wage, and that brings minimum wage to, let's say, 30 cedis, we're going to have the similar percentage increase in the base pay, so that the gap will not be more than 10%. Is that not what,
no,
what
no,
it
no,
means?
No. What we're saying is that at any point in time,
okay,
you can give the base pay an amount that will be agreed should at least be 10% more than the minimum wage.
Okay, okay. Okay, absolute figures. Okay, all right. Okay, okay. But
this was achieved when we started. The principle was agreed by government and labor, and we went with it.
Yeah.
Then at some point, government will not, agree, and so we came to a point where the minimum wage was actually over and above the base pay.
Base pay.
Something that we had agreed in 2010, that at least the base pay must be 10% above, over and above the minimum wage. It came to a point where the minimum wage was higher than the base pay. So what the government did was to move people from the base pay to the third level, which is not how this was conceived. There are a number of issues about this.
Some kind of knee-jerk reactions and approach to
this thing should be reviewed, and it should be on the basis of the living wage. We have to work hard.
So in the scheme of all these, What is the role of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission? Because if my understanding of their role is right, they contribute towards the establishing the indicators, the foundations, the parameters, and coming out with the base pay or
Fair wages was established as part of this process.
Okay.
We call the single spine pay policy.
Okay, yeah.
One of the things that we did was to agree that an institution like Fair Wages should be established. Basically, it is the industrial relations wing of government.
Okay.
They lead the negotiation. So when we go to Public Services Joint Standing Negotiating Committee, the Fair Wages boss, the Fair Wages chief executive, is the chairman of the committee. And then organized labor leader is the vice chairman.
Vice chair.
So Fair Wages has a very important role to play in this. And they coordinate the government side. And the government side includes Ministry of Finance. The Minister for Finance himself appears. The Minister for Employment. And sometimes they bring in other ministers. So they will be sitting on one side. And then the unions from the public institutions that are placed on the single spine will also be on the other side. And I can tell you sometimes we are more than 60. The labor people. Then Fair Wages and government side, Ministry of Employment, Ministry of Finance, they also sometimes number about 40. So you have about 100 people in the room talking about base pay and single spine. It's such a heated negotiation that you don't want to be part of it.
Wow.
You don't want to be part of it because government will come and say all kinds of things about their programs and so on. Labor will come and say, look at what you are paying us. This is nothing. Then you argue. There have been times we met 10 times over 3 months to try and agree on something that was announced. It's tough. I have had opportunity to lead that negotiation along with my brother Bampo and others. Look, it's really tough. It is one thing I don't miss.
What creates that kind of toughness when you have parameters, you have KPIs or key performance indicators?
Let me not, you don't need to even end your question. You see, when you live in Ghana, how many IMF programs have we implemented? 17 now.
17, yeah.
At every 2 years, there's an IMF program being implemented. That is how, and one of the key conditionalities always in IMF program is that wages, the bucks, what do you call it? The budget should not exceed a certain
threshold.
There was a time they link it to GDP. Shouldn't go beyond this. There was a time they will link it to the revenue collection and so on. That is one thing that has always featured in IMF conditionalities. And also public sector employment. At some point they say 0.5% increase for a whole year and so on. Those kind of things. That makes the work extremely, extremely difficult. Because when government comes and they tell you that 700,000 people are what we are talking about here, every 1 percentage point that comes on top of what already exists translates into 200 million Ghana cedis. And then they will bring their technical people to come and show all kinds of things. And then they tell you, if we do this, then we have to forgo this. If you do this, we have to forgo this. And some of the things that they forgo has to do with sometimes social needs of very poor people. And if you are a labor leader and you are put in a fixed position that, so if we get this, it means that some people will not get hospitals or some people will not get drugs. It's really difficult. That is why I'm saying it is such a thing that I never miss. Because they bring it and you are so tight. Here you are representing 700,000 people whose take home cannot take them home. But these are people who come to work every day. Mr. Mamu made an important point. When we started this single spine, the differentials were established. The idea was that over time, if you are a driver in the civil service and somebody is a driver in the Ghana Education Service doing the same work, there's no reason why their basics should be different. That's why they did the job evaluation. In the first place, some of the institutions refuse to come on the single spine, so they are okay. So if you establish a salary structure, and then the principle is that all Article 190 institutions are coming, and some refuse to come, and nothing happens. What do you want people to do? If things don't change, and they do not review the single spine, you will see agitations not too long. Some people called me and said they don't think that the single spine is working. If it's working, it's working against the people who are on it. And those who are not on the single spine, they are okay. Look at our colleagues in the SOEs, the state-owned enterprises, who are not on the single spine. They're much, much better than those who are on the single spine. Therefore, look at those on Article 71. They're okay. They are not on the single spine. Single spine office holders, I mean those who are placed on the single spine, are the worst off in the public service. Somebody should show to me any public servant who is earning less than 500 and something, less than 600 a day. It's not the best. And I can tell you that we need to work together as labor and government and employers to first agree on the minimum living wage. That's also now reflect in the base pay.
So, Mr. Kumsey, you see, this kind of disparity, even if you think you are well paid, but yet you see a colleague working in other segment of government business performing the same tax like you do, and is overly paid, it creates some kind of agitation.
So you see, the whole system needs resetting. Thank you. Thank you. Because you see, where you are placed on a band or a salary structure is very objective. Job analysis is conducted, and during the process of job analysis, you are looking at what job is the person going to perform, and whether or not he has the competence to perform that job. So job analysis in any typical HR environment or any HR student will tell you that the job analysis produces the competence required and the job to be executed. Now that same process, after you have defined the job to be done and the competence, there's also the evaluation of the job that determines what compensation should be provided for that job holder. So when you are placed on a salary structure, irrespective of which sector you are working, it is based on performance, capabilities, competencies for which you are placed on a band or a structure. Yeah. The moment other institutions of states are lifted off or decide not to be on the same spine, whether or not it's a single spine, we have to debate that. And they have a salary negotiation machinery or mechanism that places them or that awards certain percentage rise over the period. After a time, you see a distortion where I have the same qualification, have the same work experience, what have you, but the person who is in the other institution may be earning high because it's not on the same salary band or salary structure. So distortions are created. And that is one of the reasons why the Ghana Universal Salary Structure was replaced with a single spine. The idea was to create a spine that is single. So a single spine means that there will be fairness, equity, there will be consistency as far as the pay is concerned. So, but this has, over the period, been compromised because of one political decision or the other, one institutional decision or the other. I think, like Dr. and Mr. Memu have said, organized labor has a duty to actually call for a forensic audit in the pay system, both in the public sector, to ensure that there is equity, there is fairness, and there is justice as far as our pay systems are concerned.
Seriously, when you introduce the forensic audits, what came to mind is that anytime we hear anything forensic, it means there's malfeasance, there's abuse. But now there is seemingly an abuse on the emoluments of those on a single spine. So that's a forensic audit. I agree with you. So I think that, but in your, Dr. Ban, your presentation, you mentioned that Ghana has had opportunity of going to IMF for about 17 times. And most often, anytime we go to IMF, there are conditionalities that
actually, I didn't say they have the opportunity. I think it's a misfortune.
It's a misfortune.
To go to
so there are some imposition of ceilings or some reforms.
Conditionalities.
That do not go well to labor. The benefit
it's
of
always
labor.
Against labor.
Exactly. I think in the mid-year budget review presented by Honorable Kaswatu Forsen, if my memory serves me right, he mentioned something about the fact that the 10% adjustment in the daily minimum wage is one of the conditionalities of the IMF. I don't know whether
I didn't listen to him. I read a document, I didn't see it in there.
Yeah, because I've also looked, I didn't see it.
Yeah, I didn't see it. But the reality is that minimum wage was adjusted by 10%.
10%.
And the base pay was also adjusted by 10%. So whether he said it or not, we all know that this is not new. As I said earlier, IMF conditionalities have always informed the position of government on wages for public sector workers. And it has contributed to what we are seeing today. There was a time that minimum wage was even higher than the base pay, all because IMF comes with conditionalities. And if you don't meet the conditionalities, they don't release the funds for you. And one of the key things in IMF condition has to do with wages. The reason is simple. There are three key areas where government spends money. Number one is wages.
Yeah.
Then they say interest. I don't know now interest if that's the case. Yes. And the third one. But wage stands out. And we are talking about 700,000 now plus on the single spine.
Yeah.
In addition to other public servants, the military are there, Article 71 people are there, all those who are not on the single spine are there. So when they put it together, wages, unfortunately, whenever they talk about wages in the public service, people's eyes go straight to single spine office holders because they are in the majority.
Yeah.
But if you work out the details, you will see that even though they form like 90% of public service,
workforce,
if you put together and you work it out, what they are getting as individuals, it's not enough. It's not adequate. But because there are many, you bump it together, and then it becomes, But really, is that how we should assess wages in this country? Wages are for something. You pay Kumsen some wage, you expect him to go home, with that wage for the family to live a certain way of life. But look, therefore, the IMF, we have always spoken against IMF, because anytime IMF comes into your country, a critical group are in trouble, and one of them, workers. There were times in the structural adjustment program where Bank IMF combined forces and then they push conditions. That is where this thing hospital, we call it the cash and carry. Yeah. You see, things happen when you go to IMF. If you are not careful and you take the indicators that are always bounce on us, GDP growth, inflation is falling, those things that IMF cares about. If you go deeper than that and you look at those achievements, they call, and the consequence on individual workers.
The consequences are more.
Yes.
So there's no equilibrium.
Yes. The thing is that, yes, we have achieved inflation of 10% or 5%. What is the implication for the workers? Yeah. If by government restricting wages at a certain level, we are able to achieve minimum wage, we are able to achieve inflation of this level, and then we don't do the assessment of impact on the individuals. That's where the problem is. Well, the social impacts are huge.
I think that where we get into, if I were a preacher standing behind a pulpit, I would have said that we're going into lamentations because the problems are becoming more obvious.
Yes.
That in an attempt to reset or do things right, more harm is caused to the unfortunate ones who find themselves on a single spine. Time will not permit us to go into the way forward, but in our next episode, we would look at how we can deal with some of these issues to create some kind of better conditions for public sector workers. Yeah. But then I would want to take your last concluding remarks. Let me start with Mr. Amamu on all that we've discussed, the variations between what the minimum wage is determined, the participation and consultation, as against the base pay where it is negotiation. And despite the negotiation bit of arriving at the base pay, sometimes it's even worse off than the minimum wage, which involves participation and consultation.
I think we have reached a stage where we must tell the government the truth. When I say we must tell the government, institutions that need to tell the government the truth about wages in the country. You see, the problem with wages in the country is that we have a situation where people are in the public service. They are not anywhere outside the private sector or something. And they are looked after well. A few days ago, we went somewhere and one of the CLOCSAG executives told a story that, you see, the situation we are in is such that it's like a polygamous father. He has so many children, but he singles out just a son and a daughter. All the rest, this one daughter, son, can ask for anything.
And they get it.
And they get it. And they are living in a compound also. So they see. And when the larger group goes to the father,
there's no money.
You are too many to ask to extend all these things to you. You see? And what are they to do? And that is why there is murmuring, there is frustration, there is brain drain, and so on and so forth. It is now time for whoever is in a position to tell government that what you give to A, they are all your children. You must also extend, if not all. If you buy 10 pieces of cloth for your favorite wife, at least the others, if they can get 2, they'll be happy. But when they are getting nothing, and they are asking for something, and you say, oh, you are too many, that is the problem we have.
Thank you, Mr. Mamu. Anytime you speak, it gives me some deeper perspective, and it's so profound that it just amplifies the situation that most public sector workers go through, that you belong to the same father, yet when it gets to your turn of providing your need, they say you are too many. Whilst you see other colleagues or other siblings of yours flourishing. Thank you. Mr. Kumsin, what do you have to say?
I think that it's supremely important that we put on record that before any political party existed in this country, Labour existed. Think about that.
Before
any political party existed, when the colonial regime establishment were here, it was Labour that engaged the regime to the extent that when Kwame Nkrumah showed up, you have to rely on Labour for our independence. When we talk about 700,000 employees, it shouldn't be taken as a collective in the determination and the compensation of such a group of people. It is on individual basis, who are paid based upon competence, paid based upon productivity, paid based upon performance. So in the determination of any form of salary or emolument or any wages, that mantra or that thinking that says that because you are this large, we are compelled to squeeze you, is not objective and it's not ethical. And I am saying that Labour can do so much to transform the economic fortunes of this country if they are compensated well. And that is why the ILO, in the Centenary Declaration, adopted this human-centered approach to any economic or social transformation or what have you. So it's important that government looks at Labour and look at policies that will ensure that there's motivation, there is Labour is giving its fair share of the economic cake. Look, there's a lot of physical indiscipline in the past.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mismanagement. There's a lot of things. We know it. Look at the domestic debt exchange program and what we had. So Labour should not be the group that would always have to be penalized or suffer the consequences of economic mismanagement.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Ba?
I've been thinking since Mr. Mamu spoke, and I was not surprised to hear that analogy. He likes to use stories to explain things. Every reward system must be fair. That is the first principle, that if once we establish a reward system, that principle of fairness or equity is something that should not take so long to be applied. That is what has happened to single spine. Those workers who are under single spine are not being treated fairly. And look, it is time for us to make that point and make it forcefully. It is not as if organized labor has not tried. But as I said, we are fighting with very powerful groups, employers and government. Government, in addition to its employment role, is also a policy maker. And many things affect what kind of policy they adopt and implement. We know that IMF has dominated our economic management for all these years. And they are the reason why our salaries remain so low, especially those on single spine. Our friends in the SOEs are being treated better than the single spine. And I agree with my brothers here that, listen, this is the time for us to reset pay, the reward system, as part of the entire reset agenda. And we need to make sure it's part of the agenda. We all agree to the resetting agenda, but pay, public sector reward system, must be part of the reset agenda.
Thank you very much. Your statements just reminded me of the motto of the nation: freedom and justice.
Yes.
Where lies justice? In our emolument administration, in our reward system. Should siblings of the same parents receive different conditions, I think this is what we should be thinking about. Wages, policy, and the worker, we hope you have understood our discussion on this topic. Today we have explored the distinction between national minimum wage, base pay, and living wage. We've been trying to emphasize the importance in shaping the lives of workers across the nation. We've seen how these concepts are not just economic terms, but vital components of social justice and equity. The discussion around wages is more relevant than ever, especially as we face mounting and unending economic challenges that impact livelihood of all of us, especially the poor public sector worker. Our experts have provided invaluable insights into why fair wages matter and how they can drive positive change in our society. For our viewers, I say thank you very much for tuning in, and I believe that you continue to be with us as we take further steps to open and digest the issue about the public sector workers' emoluments. To my immediate right, Mr. Amamu, the public sector wage consultant, who has seen many generations of public sector wage interventions. So we are very much grateful for your being present here, and we'll continue to count on you as we delve deeper into the subject matter.
Thank you.
Mr. Koomson, this is the first time I'm seeing you, but I'm so happy seeing you, especially with the passion with which you speak. And you cannot be a leader without such passion. This shows how much you care for the people you lead. And I'm hoping that the passion with which you drive issues would culminate into positive results for the members that you lead. And Dr. Ba, we've cherished your presence here. Your vast experience and exposure you had as the former Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress has really impacted on our discussions here.
Thank
and
you.
Your global perspective of labor issues are so profound. We thank all of you for coming.
Thank you.
And I'm sure at the right time we'll meet again to continue from where we are leaving off. To my crew, my producer, and members of CLOSAC, and the entire public sector workers, we say thank you very much for staying tuned with us. Until we meet again, it's your regular host, Cephas Nadu, saying bye from Clock TV Studios. Have a blessed day.